I tell the truth, and I call out corruption in our government. That's what people want. They want real talk. I don't work for anyone. I'm completely independent, but I'm going to take on this machine. I'm going to take on corrupt California government. I'm going to take on the Biden administration. This goes all the way to the top, and we're going after them. Welcome everybody. Episode 1 of the Drano podcast. First off, we are going to talk about Elon Musk. Is he a hero? Is he a supervillain? A lot of people tend to think a little bit of both at times. He's trying to help save free speech for the entire planet, but he's also inventing Neuralink brain chips, which, yes, could be used for very benevolent things, helping people walk again, helping people see. Hopefully these are healthy, safe things that cannot be hacked. But as we've seen, literally everything is hackable. So lots to be apprehensive about there, especially with artificial intelligence. But put all that aside, we're going to focus on Twitter, okay? Elon Musk did the world a favor by buying Twitter. Best $44 billion ever spent in the name of free speech. And he's taken some great steps already, right? He's fired thousands of people, bunch of woke mobsters, people that censor others, people that were really doing nothing beneficial for the company. As we've seen, Twitter's working better than ever, and it's got 70, 80% fewer employees. So really, what was everyone doing there? We saw the TikTok videos. They're just, sipping lattes and having margaritas. But here's something I've noticed, right? So everyone just saw that the Twitter files were dropped, okay? He offloaded them to Matt Taibbi, Rolling Stone reporter, leftist, very good reporter. He writes very in-depth articles. I remember reading about him when he would write about George Bush back in the day. And, he wrote about the material pretty fairly, right? There was about a 35 tweet thread, and it had a lot of information. Joe Biden, the campaign was sending emails to Twitter. They targeted James Woods. They targeted a bunch of other tweets that they didn't like. Okay. The DNC, they were sending emails, asking for people to be censored. A lot of us knew this was going on, but it created a lot of outrage because now we're getting the receipts, we're getting the evidence. But I think, I'm a lawyer, right? And I'm looking at this stuff. I have my own lawsuit against Twitter, and I'm looking at what can actually be used in a lawsuit. And here is something, after all the emotions and the hysteria has died down, here's something I've learned. I don't think anything in that dump currently can be used in a lawsuit. And I think it raises concern, right? So the dump focused on Hunter Biden's laptop and what went on. And it showed a lot of the internal dialogue, right? They had James Baker, the deputy general counsel, on emails with Vijaya Gotti, the head of trust and safety, their head general counsel. And they were debating whether or not to keep this stuff censored, hacked materials, things like that. Here's the issue. In order for something to be a First Amendment violation, as most of you know, it cannot be a private company doing the censoring. If you're going to violate the First Amendment, it has to be the government. The one way that I believe, and this is the crux of my lawsuit, the government can be sued and you can actually succeed, is if you have proof of the government censoring the content, telling the big tech companies to censor it, coercing them, encouraging them, threatening them, or partnering with them. We have no government emails in that. In that massive Twitter files email dump that we got, there was not a single email from the government. That's a major missing link if anyone's going to have a successful lawsuit. I've looked at a lot of the case law in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is where you're supposed to file per the terms and conditions of these big tech companies. They, have a lot of very friendly judges, we'll say, in the Northern District of California, Ninth Circuit, that's where you got to sue. I've looked at the case law. They have cases of Nancy Pelosi saying, if big tech doesn't censor more, we're going to go after them. Adam Schiff. House resolutions have been passed. The courts have ruled, even with Trump appointed judges, that is not enough to be government involvement. My case is currently being held. There's going to be a hearing this week, and we won't know the ruling for at least a month, 3 months maybe. But we have an actual email from the California Secretary of State to Twitter saying DC Drano is spreading election misinformation. They cite the specific tweet. I then get a strike, and I ultimately get banned weeks later for election misinformation. There was something clearly going on in the background. We got one of the emails. I know there's a lot more. We want to get to trial and look at that. We are hoping that the judges will be sympathetic to that we have actual proof of the government doing this, right? And if these Ninth Circuit judges won't agree, which unfortunately we got 3 Democrat judges, so Democrat appointed judges, so we are not expecting a favorable result. They don't call it the Ninth Circus Court of Appeals for nothing. But we will then file with the Supreme Court, and I am very optimistic that if this Supreme Court will overturn Roe v. Wade and strengthen our Second Amendment rights, they're absolutely going to step in to defend our First Amendment speech rights. So I'm looking forward to that. But that's the high bar that these lawsuits have to jump over. Nothing has worked thus far. Section 230 has banned all lawsuits. We're hoping mine, I'm represented by Harmeet Dillon, Ron Coleman. We're hoping mine is going to work. But even still, we don't know for certain. And so that's the problem I saw with the Twitter files, with the dump, right? There were no specific government emails. But here is the problem, and here's why I think Elon might already be compromised by the deep state. Twitter has absolutely been working with the government to censor the Hunter Biden laptop story. And we have proof of that, okay? You guys heard of Yoel Roth? He recently left the company. He was the head of trust and safety. He signed an FEC disclosure, right, under penalty of perjury, an official government document stating that since 2018, I have had regular meetings with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and industry peers regarding election security. During these weekly meetings, the federal law enforcement agencies communicated that they expected, quote, hack and leak operations, quote, by state actors might occur in the period shortly before the 2020 presidential election, likely in October. I was told in these meetings that the intelligence community expected that individuals associated with political campaigns would be subject to hacking attacks and that material obtained through these hacking attacks would likely be disseminated over social media platforms, including Twitter. These expectations of hack and leak operations were discussed throughout 2020. Okay? That's 2 years ago. And we have 0 emails between the government and Twitter employees that were disclosed in that Matt Taibbi Twitter files dump. All right. This FEC disclosure goes on to say, I did not receive any communications from or have any communications with representatives of Biden for president, the DNC, or any of their agents regarding the New York Post articles before Twitter implemented the enforcement actions. How convenient, because they certainly had communications related to other takedowns, but he's potentially mischaracterizing some of that. But you know, we don't know for certain. To the best of my knowledge, no Twitter employee received any communications from or had any communications with representatives for Biden for president, DNC. So this was for the FEC, right? This is campaign related disclosures. But when you put these two together, Twitter was meeting with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the Department of Homeland Security. You're telling me there's 0 emails between them? Really? Okay. Regardless of even the emails, you have those meetings. That's coordination. What was being said in those meetings? Who was being targeted? And I truly believe that there are emails, right? And here's why I think Elon may be compromised by the deep state. He did not release those emails. Okay, remember he was going to release these Twitter files and then there was a delay and he was just double checking some things. This almost seems too perfectly curated to not have any government involvement whatsoever in these emails. Here's what I think is happening. When President Trump was elected into office, when they spied on him, the way that they spied on him is because the Steele dossier, right? Michael Sussman, Perkins Coie attorney, passed along the PP dossier to James Baker, who was the FBI's general counsel. Okay. And this guy is supposed to, know when something is a criminal offense and separate that from some type of political maneuver, which obviously this ended up being a DNC funded dirty hit to justify Trump getting spied on. James Baker passed along that information to James Comey. They ultimately ended up getting warrants to spy on the elected president of the United States. Okay. One of the greatest scandals in American history that has thus far not had justice brought upon the perpetrators. James Baker was, he stepped down pretty soon after President Trump started to unravel this stuff. He fired James Comey. Guess where James Baker ended up? Deputy General Counsel of Twitter. Okay. Second in command for their legal department. Actively involved in the Hunter Biden laptop suppression in his emails. Now, he takes this very legalese stance. He says, oh, well, let's just take precautions and make sure that these are not hacked materials. So let's keep things suppressed for now. Let's censor the New York Post, America's oldest newspaper. Let's keep this stuff censored right before the election, obviously helping Joe Biden. And you mean to tell me that James Baker, in his decades of working for the FBI, did not have any communications with his friends at the FBI during this time? You mean to tell me that Yoel Roth had no idea that this laptop situation was coming and that he got no heads up from his FBI and Homeland Security and national intelligence colleagues that had been meeting with him for 2 years, that they didn't say anything about this and they just let Twitter figure it out? Okay, let's call a spade a spade. That's obviously all BS. Of course, there was coordination, which means that the government was involved, which means that the government unconstitutionally censored a newspaper, journalism, that they censored free speech of Americans, that they suppressed the distribution of corrupt materials from somebody who is likely compromised by foreign adversaries via business deals and blackmail, that our own FBI was not involved with that? Of course they were. And that's why there were no emails from the federal government released in the Twitter files. You want to know why? Because guess where James Baker is? He's the deputy general counsel. Now, Elon, when he took over, he fired thousands of people. All right. It was a wood chipper for the woke mobsters in that company. All the senior executives, Parag, Vijaya, the CEO, the general counsel, the CFO, gone. Guess who's still working there at Twitter as of today, December 5th? James Baker, the FBI general counsel who helped spy on Trump, one of the greatest scandals in American history, is still currently working at Twitter as one of their heads of legal counsel. The guy connected for 20 plus years with the senior level people at the FBI. That same FBI that coordinated with Twitter to prep them for this hacked materials thing, they knew about the laptop in 2019. Rudy Giuliani and Steve Bannon, they turned it into the FBI in October of 2019. The FBI sat on it. Okay? And then they basically said, we're going to frame this as a Russian disinformation. Sound familiar? Right? So this was their plan. This was a cover-up. Okay. And I believe Elon is being, I don't know that he's necessarily personally compromised. I think he is being restrained by the deep state. I think they are making it very difficult for him to release the true dirt in that company. And I don't know necessarily how it's going to come out. Maybe it will come out eventually. But I know for a fact that as long as James Baker works there as deputy general counsel, nothing compromising the deep state is going to come out. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. But right now it seems like they still have a hold on the dirt and they're not going to let it out. Even for $44 billion, he still can't let out that information. That's how powerful these people are. Now, you remember also Apple, right? Elon was saying, yes, there are verifiable concerns that Apple might remove Twitter from the App Store. Guess who's pushing that? Bad people, deep state, Hillary, her friends, Soros, I'm sure. Okay. Elon recently met with Tim Cook at Apple at the headquarters. He posted a picture of it. Comes back. Yeah, everything's good. Tim Cook says, yeah, everything's good. We're not going to kick you off the App Store. Apple had recently cut off all their advertising revenue for Twitter. Over $50 million. I think it was even up to $100 million a year. Guess what? That advertising revenue is back in play. What deal did they cut? Right? So you've got the deep state lawyer still working for Twitter. You've got Apple not only keeping Twitter on the App Store, you got them paying tens of millions of dollars in revenue. And you've got Elon Musk who said, I'm going to bring all these people back. Yes, he brought back President Trump. He brought back a lot of big names. He brought back Project Veritas. Still hasn't brought back James O'Keefe. Still hasn't brought back Dr. Malone. Still hasn't brought back DC Drano. Said he would. He hasn't. Why? There's something else going on here, I think. Now, I don't blame Elon. I know he's managing, threading a needle through some of the most powerful, dangerous, conniving, evil, corrupt forces in the history of the world. And like I said, I think Elon's generally a good guy. But I think the hooks are already in him, and they're going to keep him contained as much as they can. So, more to come on that. We're moving on to President Trump. The media is throwing their new distraction. They want everyone to criticize, condemn President Trump. He said horrible things. He wants to destroy the Constitution. That's their latest spin, right? Destroy the Constitution. He wants to overthrow it. Yeah, okay. With a Truth Social post. That's what he's doing, right? So he's criticizing what happened in 2020. I'm not going to say the exact words because we're going to be on YouTube with this. We're going to be on some other platforms, but he has rightfully called out what happened in 2020. He's upset. 75 million of us are upset. We were re-upset with the 2022 midterms. They think he's trying to overthrow the Constitution with this one post. What about the border crisis? What about not having immigration laws and having millions of illegal aliens flooding this country? What about the censorship by our government of free speech and journalism? What about red flag laws that were recently passed under Mitch McConnell's guidance, the funding of red flag laws at the state level? What about January 6th prisoners in jail for almost years at this point with no trial? Does that seem constitutional? Does that seem like a fair application of the law? 2,000 mules ring a bell? What happened with that, right? All those things are such greater threats to our Constitution, more than a U.S. president that is rightfully upset about what happened during his reelection. The only president in U.S. history to get more votes in his reelection and not win. The only one ever. And then you got a guy that needs a drool catcher and a seeing eye dog to walk down the hallway who somehow got the most votes in American history. Please. We know who is the threat to the Constitution. Okay? It's the deep state. It's the Democrat Party. It's the rhinos. It's not the man putting everything on the line, getting investigated in every direction, who's trying to save democracy, who's trying to save our Constitution. That man is President Trump. Now for a little bit of action on the Second Amendment. Some of you may have seen this video. For those that haven't, I found this footage. It's gone viral. I posted it on my Instagram. It is probably the best representation of why you do need at least 30 rounds, maybe 50, maybe 100 round drum mag if they don't jam. But let's roll the clip here and see what these guys ran into when they were taking a little stroll in the woods. Intense. Okay, I've gone hog hunting. Those things are massive, 300 pounds sometimes, right? They look like bears, and they're vicious. Okay, if you see their teeth, their tusks are 3-4 inches and they're razor sharp. They grind them on each other. They sharpen them. These things eat anything and everything, and what they like to do is they actually like to bite you and then let you bleed out, and then they just come clean you up. And there's 15, 20 of those things. Okay, 5.56 rounds, even 7.62. That's, I don't know if those guys made it out alive, I'll be honest, but those things do not go down easy. And even they were running towards the gunfire. They were like the opposite of Uvalde cops, right? So obviously we need 30 round magazines. We don't need a reason for anything. Okay, it's a constitutional right. The government can piss off. We need weapons equal and on par to what the government has to prevent against a tyrannical takeover. Okay, the hog hunting, yes, absolutely need it. Always have firearms when you're out in the woods, especially in the South, because especially in Florida, everything in the woods wants to kill you. Alligators, cougars, Florida panthers, pythons. So there's many reasons to need at least 30 rounds. They want to take those guns away from you when we're never going to let them. That's the one thing standing between us and thousands of years of darkness. It's America. It's our freedoms. It's our free speech. And it's our right to keep and bear arms. And now we're going to move into something a little bit uplifting to end episode 1 of the DC Drano podcast. You know, we all like to attack the evil permeating our world, especially our country. A lot of the evil's going after our kids. But I tweeted, I didn't tweet this. I Truth Socialed this the other day. It went pretty viral on the platform, a little bit on Twitter too. It's one of my favorite things is when my Truth Social posts go on Twitter and they go viral. I think there was one a few weeks ago, like 20,000 retweets. Thank you, Jordan Rachel, for sharing that. I forget what it was about, but even though I'm banned, you can't ban an idea. So I posted this on Truth Social. It got a little bit of traction. How about instead of Drag Queen Story Hour, we have Veteran Story Hour, or Farmer Story Hour, Nurse Story Hour, Firefighter Story Hour, Cancer Survivor Story Hour. Not about a story hour for a guy that wants to dress as a woman and read to an audience of children. What kind of stories are you even telling there? Okay, let's not only attack the evil, let's replace it with goodness. Let's be a force of light out there. Do God's work. Build up your treasures in heaven. And if we each do our part, we will make this world a better place. So thank you for tuning in today. Like it, share it, subscribe it, tell your friends. Stay tuned for the next episode because we're just getting started. God bless.